Hey guys, so what's up? I'm doing a quick walkthrough of my project Janjira that came out on Flamingo a couple months ago. I just wanted to go over basically the sound design I did, what I used for plugins, the processing, and so on. So you guys can just get an idea, and hopefully it helps inspire you in any way, or maybe you'll learn something, whatever works. Just hopefully it's beneficial to you. So this is the main in-mix, the arrangement, everything. I did all my mixing and mastering, everything right in this one project instead of bouncing stuff down like I usually do. So it worked out that way. Just because I was happy with the mix down, I didn't feel like I needed to go any further. So sometimes you get lucky with that, and if it sounds good, then keep it. You don't have to go any further. But I'll go over my bass layering. This is drop 1 area, drop 2 over here. I'll go over the layering there, and my breakdown here I'll go over right after. So let's dig right in. I'll just play it for you guys so you can get familiar with the drop. So you can see I made drop 2 a little more harder, and it had extra layering, but I also made it more of a distorted feel on drop 2, just of course to alter the 2 drops, to variate them. It's always a good idea if you can do that instead of just copy and pasting and doing small little things. It's best to try to make a good variation and make it stronger. So the end of your song, of course, is hitting a little harder, and there's a different drop. It's always good to have. So I'll just go over the layering real quick. The bass lines go one by one so you can see the difference of the layering and what I did for processing. Bass riff 1 made with Spire. See what it sounds like. And this specific sound is a sound that I recycled from my PowerCat session. You can see the channel strip name. I basically reused that sound I made for the PowerCat track and incorporated it into this one as a layer. It's smart to do that if you guys nail, a specific layer or sound that you're really loving in your tracks. Try to recycle it and, make it a little different into another song and keep using it. It's almost like you find a kick drum that you love. Try to use it as many songs as you can without, getting tired of it or anything. Try to alter it a little bit, but if you got something good, keep using it. So that's more of like the talk layer that has a little signature high end. Let's see what this one is. I think this is the low. Yeah, so that's the fat lower layer of the layers there. And then these two are more of mid-highs. You can see in the EQ, especially this one, I'm rolling off because we don't need any of this stuff in the way of the kick drum and all that stuff on the low end. The kick in this layer, you don't need anything in the way. So the next layers I'm rolling off too. Compression and Maserati 4. This gives it a lot more grit and distortion, which is what I wanted in this song. It was very important to get that raw distortion sound. That's what I was going for in the bass line. So that talk layer was just made in Spire. You can do that with the phaser option up here. If you guys are going for that sound in your tracks, it's really sick. Just don't overdo it. Try to either, make it variate with the rate or maybe automate it. Don't overdo it because that sound can get really, unpleasing to the ear if it's just overused. So I use it as like a lower layer to warm the mids and kind of make the mids and the high kind of feel like they're automating and moving through the whole bass line. But like I said, you can make that sound in here. You know, you can do like a mid-high talking style. So yeah, you can see I obviously automated it just so it kind of gives that walking feeling. You know, that's the way I would describe it. Like the bass is walking and running and moving the entire time. It's not really sitting still. You can see the automation there that I did it all the way throughout the track, so it's not sitting still with that phasing vowel sound, you know. The next layer, I did like an acid hit here just to complement the bass. Did that with Silent, put some grit on it with the Maserati stuff, ducking LFO, and then rolled off a little more. I could have gone even more with the roll off here. You could bring it out to even 200, but I wanted the fatness of the acid hit here to complement the kick. So to take out the low end, I just did a deep tuck with the LFO to really, so it doesn't hit on the one, it doesn't affect the kick too much. And then some noise and snare hits to complement the bass. And just the main thing that I would point out, try to make sure your snares or your toms or anything you're kind of complementing here with the bass line, make sure they're in the correct MIDI or root key of your bass. You know, you don't want your bass in G or whatever, and then your snare or your tom tonal is kind of hitting in like a D or whatever. You know, you want to make sure it's all going to match the bass line, so it's more of a layer and it's not fighting the riff and the tonal of the bass line. You don't want to kind of you know, make it confusing. So just make sure it's pitched. So here I have a pitch corrector, putting it in the correct key, along with putting it in the correct key on the MIDI, the piano roll. So just make sure you guys do that. And then the processing, I put some overdrive to really just make it distorted and have a little more character. And CLA for compression. I usually use this a lot for my compression, but right now I'm using a lot of the UAD stuff. In this specific project, I didn't have UAD at the time, so I don't think we'll even see any UAD processing. But the sausage fattener I usually leave at the bottom to just give it extra character, distortion to the specific sound. And I'll take all these off so you can see what it sounds like. So yeah, you can see I was messing with the Maserati too before, and it just was too overdriven. So I just put a simple overdrive to give it a little more, you know, crunch. I just wanted a little more character to the snare, something subtle, but something that you'll notice. Here's a kick drum I use. There's no processing because I do my kick drums in a separate session and process them all down, and then I bounce them out as wave so I can just drop them in my session and quickly get them going. So you can feel that's a fat rounded kick that really complemented the bass line. It really worked out. It had a good attack. All this sub here was perfect for this track, so it kind of punched through the bass, and the way I EQ'd everything, it kind of, you know, kind of just meshed well together and worked out. And just some rev hits. I do a lot of this stuff in all my tracks. I try to, you know, I don't like when my bass line's just sitting playing out, you know, for 16 bars. I like to do certain fills here, certain drum hits, you know, every 2-4 bars, bring in the rides, the snares, whatever, because I want a variation throughout the bass line. I don't like stuff to sit still and kind of play out for too long. I don't want to bore, you know, the listener at all. So that's kind of something I always try to do in all my drops, or chorus, you could call it. I just want a lot of variation to complement the main bass line riff. So let's see what the hits are. And this hit I think I found in a sample pack a while ago. I don't remember where it came from. It's a pretty common sound, but I just bounced it down and do another session, processed it a little bit, and then just pitched it to the correct key so I could work with it in G. and it worked out good. So that's a cool hit. And then I did some reverse stuff here, bouncing down synths and shit into the correct key and just make them complement the bass line. So it's kind of trial and error when you're doing this stuff. Just kind of mess with it, and sometimes take the whole bass riff, bounce it down as audio. You can bounce the region. I'm not sure how you guys can do it in your DAW. Just bounce the specific full sound down, and sometimes just mess with it in an audio clip, reverse it or cut it up, and find cool little signature pieces from the bass line and just reverse them or kind of try to incorporate them into your main bass riff. It's what I did with Power Cat and obviously this song, but I do like certain fills and stuff. I bounce the wave down and mess with it a little bit, so it's a lot of fun. And sometimes you find stuff that's really cool and fitting to make the bass line, even more unique. So the as far as the MIDI goes, this MIDI isn't snapped on grid. I did more of a swing MIDI. You can see it's not snapping to grid. So I wanted to have a little more of a swing offbeat feeling. So it kind of it's just a different, unique sound, and you can hear the difference if I play it with it on the grid. Let's see what it sounds like. So that's off grid. If we did like a 16th and snapped everything, you can see how fast that is. I mean, it's cool, but it was a little too heavy, a little too, sped up for me. So to slow things down and make it groove and swing a little more, I just did like an offbeat MIDI notes to make it have that swing. It's a very cool and unique thing to do. So try that out if you guys, if you want something unique. You don't always have to have everything snapped to grid. If you think about music, it should be organic and natural. It doesn't have to sound like a robot all the time. If you think about it that way, everything doesn't have to be perfectly on grid. So try that out if you haven't. 8-bar fill I just did here to kind of wind up into the second part. Usually people will just have this second part of the drop just glued right in. I did like just a quick fill to vary it a little bit. So yeah, that was a cool part, because it works better in the club like that. It's kind of like, you got to think, of course, with the people standing in front of you and everything in a live setting, how people would react. And it's cool to do a quick load up and punch it right back into another drop. So that was a cool part. Here you guys can see I have one clip here. This is smart to try if you guys haven't. After you got your bass riff and everything processed and you think this is done, usually I'll take this part, bounce it down as just a wave, a 24-bit wave, and then I'll bring it in. So it's going to be all these sounds into this one wave here. So I can now mess with this instead of automating all this stuff, filtering it or whatever I want to do individually. I just bounce it down here. So now I can do all my automation on this one clip. So you can hear the entire bass riff right in here. So you can see I did some processing on the bass into the breakdown. Otherwise, it's just going to stop dry right here. And, I didn't want that. It wasn't a good transition. So that's why I did that. Did just some sound shifting from waves, pitch bending all the way up full octave to kind of get right into the break. I thinned it out with the EQ just so it thins away. And then I did some bus reverb with true verb so it carries over right into the break. And that worked out great for the transition into this part. So you can see the break, I have it in a full bounce. So I did the same idea I did here, up here. So I kept I kept all the layering here so I can see them. I always mute them out, but I keep them in case I need to go back and make an adjustment. So I'll mute that out so you can hear the individual layers. Should be everything here. Mute this out. So let's see if it sounds right now. So those are my strings. I actually got those from an inboard Logic plugin. It's just called Strings, and they sample, really amazing different strings and stuff that you can use in here and kind of reprocess and everything. So I found some good strings that I really liked from Logic, and then just processed them out, reverb, compression, and stuff to just make them fit. They're really cool, but they need a little distortion and reverb and whatnot. So that's where I got those, and we can see the MIDI notes here for the break. Very basic, but the main part that I really wanted to stick out was the part over here where I kind of blasted in the layers and put like a rock guitar, because I really like rock style distorted breaks and something that's unique and not the standard EDM stuff. I just like layering and doing different bass lines that are really different from everybody else's. So you can hear the rock guitar that I put in here from the sampler. And you can see usually you'll have to do a pitch bend technique to get that, but I put these notes up higher because the bass has a glide, so when it's trying to come off this note into these, it's got a glide, so it kind of rips the bass up before it goes down here. So that's why you're getting that glide effect. So I thought that was very cool. It's a wicked, awesome, like character sound to the break. It really complements the break. So you can see the synth saw layers. I kept them lower in the mix because I wanted the strings to be dominant, but I wanted, once measure 91 came in right here, I wanted that to be like, a big part of the song. So it just kind of has that big feeling, but you don't want to overdo it with the saws. So these kind of complement the strings, but they're the main part driving the entire break into drop 2. So let's see what it sounds like full. And you can see what those saws do as far as obviously making it fuller. I'll get rid of them. You can see it's just a huge difference. So yeah, that's a great part of the song as far as the big part. It's just a powerful part that I really love. As far as the song goes, because I really wanted this to have the energy going into this build, obviously into drop 2, because I really put a couple more layers into drop 2 to make it fuller and fatter and have more distortion. So yeah, you can see drop 2. I believe I have one extra layer from drop 1 in here, bass riff 4, which is actually a really distorted, crunchy layer. Because again, like I said, I wanted it to be a distorted bass that was, having a lot of high-end character and kind of have that rock feel, and it turned out really cool. It is a little muddy at times. Some engineer or someone that has a really, really good ear might be like, you know what, this is muddy, or it's got too much distortion. But I really wanted that in a way. Usually you don't want muddy, distortion and stuff too overload, but that's really what I wanted for this song without overdoing it, of course. And it turned out to be a really good part of the song, to have that character bass being really overdriven. So let me see what this layer sounds like. So you can see what the Maserati does to that bass as I bypass it. It's a pretty good difference. It just gives it that high-end character. So you can hear the difference with it all on or off. The processing, obviously, as you guys know, is such a big deal to really make your sounds stand out and make them clean and full and, you know, all the above. So make sure you guys process as much as you can. You know, don't overdo it, but then again, don't leave your stuff sounding dry and bland. Try to just do trial and error with stuff until you really feel like you've nailed something. So yeah, that's mostly it for the bass riff. Again, the fills and stuff, the reverse hits, they're so key to make the bass really whack through. You know, like those little character pieces are what's going to stand out to the average listener. You know, that's what makes the song really punch through and have a unique feel. And then just a bunch of effects. I won't go too much into those. It's just, you know, effects is all up to you guys. It's trial and error and finding what's going to fit into your specific song, because every song I have different effects and different processing on them and whatnot, because obviously every song is different. So you need to really, you know, find your niche with your effects, save some, you know, save certain ones that you really love and try to reuse them, but don't, you know, don't beat it too hard that you've overused them like 10 times. You know, just try to alter them if you can here and there. But sorry, I've been talking for a while. I can go over the mastering real quick for you guys. What I did on the mastering channel. I'm going to play it without any mastering so we can hear the difference. Mute all this off. So yeah, it's kind of like dry and not powerful. So I use the FF Pro L just to punch, obviously as in Liviner, but I'm really pushing the song. You'll see once I put it all together, it gets probably really red here, which generally isn't good. But again, I'm going for that really distorted feeling and punchy, overdriven song, so it worked out. Yeah, so you can see my song is really like slammed up here. Generally you want a tiny bit of red. You don't want to push that too hard, but that's okay again for this specific song. Then I used a linear phase multi-band to play with the highs a little bit, take out the lows, and then the CLA for the compression. Let's see how far we're. Yeah, not much at all. So usually I'll go even a little deeper, but then you sometimes get too much of a ducking feeling and overcompress, so I didn't want to do that too hard. Then some Pro Q, just a little bit of enhancement here and here, working in mid-side mode, which I hope everybody's working in. And then channel EQ again to roll off a little bit on the high, but give it a little more character on the high. You know, these little tiny niches, trust me, they make a huge difference. Even though they're so tiny to like 1 or 2 dB, it's crazy what a difference that'll make, especially in a club setting or when you're listening into a car or something. You can notice the bright difference with that. And then I did an S1 imager just on the load up on the master channel. You know, it's brought back to 0 on the drop, so it's not affecting anything. It's just used for the master channel here. Actually didn't use it in this session, but what I usually do is make the song go from stereo to mono on the build up, which would sound like this. You know, do something like this and slam right up into stereo here on 115, and it makes a big difference as far as the impact. And you can see the yellow line here is my volume. I kind of just brought it down here so it slams back up and a lot more impact on the drop. But that was a cool tip, that trick that I've used in all my songs. I'm sure you guys are doing that. But that's really it for the master overall. Nothing complicated because I really liked my mix down and felt like I nailed the mix down, that I didn't need to overdo the processing on the master. So that's really it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed, and if you have any questions regarding Janjira or any other of my projects, please inbox me. I'll leave my email and you guys can contact me anytime. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks.